Alright, what's up? What's going on, guys? Toasty here, Get Burnt, and I'm talking more about Dragon Ball Z games. Today, I'm not going to be talking about Xenoverse or any of the movie stuff for today, but I am going to be talking about two things that, well, I guess you could say it's one thing, but it is technically two things that the DBZ community really wants, and I'm going to actually say why I think these may or may not happen. Alright, so Budokai Tenkaichi 4 and Raging Blast 3. These have been asked for a while. A lot of people have been saying, oh man, why are you making this Xenoverse game? Like, just make Budokai Tenkaichi 4. Just make Raging Blast 3. And then when Nasloik or Trevax went and made a Raging Blast 3 sort of fanwish thing where he actually put up, well, he made pictures of what he thinks is what is really good for a Dragon Ball Z game. A lot of people agreed with it, a lot of people back it, and a lot of people are very angry when they see a game that is not completely following what he made. All right, so first of all, I want to just say it flat out right. Spike are the makers of both of these games. Budokai Tenkaichi and Raging Blast, Spike has made both of them. If you don't know who Spike is the developer of both of these games, or now they're known as Spike Chunsoft. They're the makers of J-Star's Victory Versus. They're the makers of the Attack on Titan video game that came out, I think it was last year. It was last year, I'm not really sure. It was either last year or this year, which I think it was last year. And they've made a few games for Dragon Ball Z. They made a lot. They've made every single game since the beginning of Budokai Tenkaichi, I believe, besides Burst Limit. And I don't know if I think Sagas also came out in between that, so I think that was between that as well and Sagas. I don't think they made Sagas, which obviously people didn't like Sagas anyway, so that's just not something to even worry about. And they made every single game, every single one, and people would notice that after Budokai Tenkaichi 3, they started to kind of degrade in quality. And the same thing happened with sales. Sales for games after Budokai Tenkaichi 3 went down pretty hard. Like, obviously, Raging Blast 2 did still sell 1 million if you add up both on, like, the consoles. Like, if you add both of the consoles that they were on up, yeah, it adds up to over 1 million, which is, it's good. It's not awful, but they kind of have been really degrading quality, especially after making Ultimate Tenkaichi and Dragon Ball Z for Connect. And after those games, it seems like they are not going to be making any Dragon Ball Z games anymore. It seems like Namco Bandai, and that's what I'm just saying, it seems that Namco Bandai has pushed them off of making DBZ games. And they have good reason to. I mean, Raging Blast 1 and 2, they were seeming to go pretty good. Raging Blast 1 and 2 were actually not awful games in terms of the general public's eye. A lot of people didn't like Raging Blast 1 and 2. A lot of people liked them, and it would seem like they were just okay. But then they went into the really bad zone with Ultimate Tenkaichi and Dragon Ball Z for Connect. Dragon Ball Z for Connect was probably the worst Dragon Ball Z game ever made, period. No matter what. You cannot argue with this because this is it's just fact now at this point. It's not even opinion, because Dragon Ball Z for Connect, in terms of quality and in terms of actual, like, fun at all, is the worst Dragon Ball Z game ever made. One of the worst, like, anime games ever made, most likely. I can't really think of any other anime games that are truly more awful than Dragon Ball Z for Connect. So, from a business standpoint, I could see a perfectly good reason for Namco Bandai kicking Spike off of the roster for making any Dragon Ball Z games. And it seems like not Namco Bandai. It does seem like Namco Bandai is starting to either get people that they've already had make DBZ games, aka Dimps, as we all know. Dimps is coming back to make Xenoverse. And we also have seen that they took ArtDink to make Battle of Z. A lot of people thought that this was just a break for Spike, since Spike has been making DBZ games pretty much every single year for a while. And a lot of people thought that it was, Spike is just making a new game, so it's taking longer. But that's probably not the case. It seems like they've been kicked off, and that there will not be a Budokai Tenkaichi 4 or a Raging Blast 3. Now, for Dragon Ball Z games, it seems, or most of the time it just seems, and it could be coincidence, but who knows, that they've only wanted to make 3 entrances into one series before stopping the series entirely. They did it with Budokai 3, and they also did it with Budokai Tenkaichi. Budokai Tenkaichi 1, 2, and 3 was it. And then that was it. For Budokai, it was different, because Budokai 1, 2, and 3 were the main Budokai games, obviously, but then they had a game that was called Infinite World that came out in 2008. Didn't sell well because it was released so late into the PS2 generation. Like, PS2 generation had pretty much ended at that point, and the Xbox 360 and PS3 were pretty much reigned at that point, so there was no real point in putting anything on the PS2. But it was a new entry into the Budokai series. A lot of people don't want to see it as that, but it was a new entry. Without even a doubt, it was Budokai 4. And since it was Budokai 4, nobody really ever sees it, and everyone always says make a Budokai 4. And it seems like they just don't want to make a fourth iteration in any series of Dragon Ball Z games, or at least it has seemed like that since they've never done it before. So Budokai Tenkaichi 4 is already out of the question. Second thing is that it's old. Budokai Tenkaichi is an old series. There's no real point in actually like making a new version of a new game if there are new fans who have never played those previous games. It's like coming back and making a Budokai 4 right now would not make sense. That's the reason why. Like, even though Burst Limit was on the PS3 and Xbox 360, I believe it was made before Infinite World. So that could have easily been called Budokai 4. You know why it wasn't? Because it was pretty much a remake of the first Budokai. And they don't think that putting something in the fourth iteration would even make sense, because, you know, they skipped a generation. They went to a new generation. They could have easily called the Raging Blast 1 Budokai Tenkaichi 4. They could have easily done that because it was made by the same company. It was pretty much the same game mechanics, except it was a little bit different, and especially because a lot of the stuff had to transfer over to the new consoles. So it was a completely new series. They made it a new series, so it was named Raging Blast. So it seems like they don't like making fourth iterations. And for Raging Blast 3, Spike started to make Ultimate Tenkaichi because maybe after seeing how awful Raging Blast 2 did in terms of like reception, because a lot of people hated on Raging Blast 2. Like, it's funny because Ultimate Tenkaichi, for some sites and everything, which those sites do matter, by the way, they got better actual reception and reviews for Ultimate Tenkaichi than Raging Blast 2. Yeah, and I know it seems crazy, right? Even IGN gave Ultimate Tenkaichi a higher score than Raging Blast 2. So it from a business standpoint, especially, Raging Blast 2 was a liability at that point that they should not have continued, and it makes a lot of sense. And now a lot of people are asking Raging Blast 3 or Budokai Tenkaichi 4. Budokai Tenkaichi 4 at this point, I know for a fact, will not happen. Reason why? It's old. That's first. Second of all, they probably are not going to make a fourth iteration. If anything, they'll make a successor. And 3, because Spike seems to be done with making DBZ games. And it doesn't seem often that they would actually bring in a new developer for Dragon Ball Z games to continue this sort of thing. They would just have a sort of successor sort of thing going on where they would take inspiration from an older game and then make a new game. Now, if Xenoverse is actually taking any stuff from the Raging Blast 3 fan wish, I do not know. It seems like it's actually taking some of the stuff, especially because he did have the idea for multiple races of characters that you can make, like Frieza and Majin Buu and all that stuff. Although all that stuff was in Dragon Ball Online, which is where people think it's mostly from. So it's hard to see if that's actually what influenced them to do this. But yeah. It's a hard thing to say, but I do not think that Raging Blast 3 or Budokai Tenkaichi 4 will happen anytime soon. And the reason for that is just because I've said it already. It's old. The Raging Blast 2, especially for Raging Blast 2, got an awful reception. So from their standpoint, it doesn't make any sense to continue the series. Spike might not be making any more DBZ games, so there's no point in even trying, because if Spike's not bringing any DBZ games to the table anymore, then why would they end up continuing Spike's series through somebody else? And most of the time, if they bring in a new developer for DBZ, it most likely won't end out really well. But who knows? We don't know the actual details. We don't know if Spike's actually done making DBZ games. This is just all speculation and all theory. But I really want to know what you guys think about this. Do you guys think that Raging Blast 3 or Budokai Tenkaichi 4 will actually happen anytime soon? And if so, why do you think this? That's all I really got to say for today. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, which I doubt you would have, because if you enjoyed Budokai Tenkaichi 3 Raging Blast 2 a lot, then you may not be happy to hear this sort of thing. But yeah, kind of thought that I should make this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new here. And yeah, peace out.